Well, first tonight, Vice President Kamala-Harris is the top and, for now, only choice to take over the Democratic nominee as the race for the White House intensifies. Thanks for being with us for Fox 13 News at 5. I'm Matthew Smith.
And I'm Hannah Kim. In the 24 hours since President Joe Biden dropped out and endorsed her, Harris has been collecting hundreds of endorsements. She's also raised a whopping $81 million in the last 24 hours.
But Biden's bombshell announcement has the Democratic Party's rulemakers scrambling from Washington, D.C. to here in Washington state. A nomination process that usually would take months, well, they're trying to do it in weeks.
Fox 13's Shira Matsuzawa joining us now from the newsroom. And Shira, we're getting a better idea of that timeline.
Yeah, the Washington State Democratic Party sent me the schedule, and they're hitting the ground running starting this week because the Democratic National Convention starts on August 19th in Chicago, and that's less than a month away.
It's been exciting, 24 plus hours.
Shasti Conrad is the chair of the Washington State Democrats, as well as a delegate who is headed to Chicago next month for the Democratic National Convention. She's among those who now have a hand in who the next Democratic nominee for president will be.
We're truly in an unprecedented historic moment that we all get to have this front row seat to history.
And while there are a lot of questions circulating what happens next, we do know this. A DNC Rules Committee meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, July 24th. That's where the Rules Committee will consider and review draft rules for a framework to select a new nominee for president. The next day, the Washington DNC national delegates will meet to consider voting to endorse Vice President Kamala-Harris or any other candidate.
We're just sort of in that holding pattern while all of this kind of gets settled into place.
But what does this mean for our Washington ballot, which needs to be certified by August 20th, which is in the middle of when the Democratic National Convention is happening?
Because we have a Democratic Secretary of State, he was able to find a solution that would allow for the nominee to be able to put on the ballot even after they were nominated a couple of days within August 20th, which is our deadline.
In Ohio, though, the deadline there is August 7th, and Conrad says they couldn't find a solution.
And so that is partially why there is discussion around having a virtual roll call vote.
And that virtual roll call is going to happen before August 6th. And during that virtual roll call, all the delegates are going to vote on who they would like to see as their nominee.
Shoreline Mayor Chris Roberts is on the Credentials Committee and also headed to the convention.
And so we are trusting the delegates of Washington State and across the nation to make the best decision on behalf of Democrats.
And while the pick for the next Democratic presidential nominee is now up to the delegates, Conrad says it's still reflective of Washingtonians.
Their votes that they cast back in March in our presidential primary process are what set all of this in motion. It was what gave us the numbers of the number of delegates who would be pledged to President Biden and those who, we have 2 uncommitted delegates.
For Delegate Charles Adkins, who's 26 years old.
It really feels empowering to be able to really get to experience these elections and national politics through a very frontline vision.
And late word out of Washington, D.C. tonight, the Associated Press reporting the Democratic National Committee is planning to push forward with a virtual roll call to pick a presidential nominee rather than wait to do it in person at the convention. Details will be finalized at that Wednesday Rules Committee meeting, but the AP says a draft of the plan calls for the vote to take place on August 7th. In the newsroom, Shira Matsuzawa, Fox 13 News.